start.
All right, give an intro.
All right. So we're going to talk about developmental disabilities, intellectual disabilities, so that's the topic for tonight. We're going to talk about a bunch of different disabilities, but we're going to also talk about how that relates to teaching. We have some equipment here and ATS, but we have a couple of people here that I don't know you either.
Okay.
So I'm Heather. I've been with Stride for, 6-7 years. I'm a speech therapist in North Colony, so I have a pretty decent background in disabilities. And I do not have a level 1 or anything. I haven't gone for that yet.
And I'm Jamie, and I've been with Stride for 2 years, and before that I worked for Jiminy in their kids department for 2 years, and I got my Alpine Level 1 PSIA certification while I was working at Jiminy, and then I got my Adaptive Level 1 certification this past spring. So those are our creds.
Yep.
And yeah, and so when it comes to skiing, the two things that you want that differentiates adaptive skiing and snowboarding from regular skiing and snowboarding is that we're able to take people with their special needs, and we're able to help them with adaptive teaching methods and also adaptive equipment. So tonight we're going to talk first about what some of the disabilities are when you're talking about cognitive impairments, how they might develop and what they might involve, some medications possibly, and how to assess the student, and then how to introduce a ski lesson and choose what types of either behavior management techniques, teaching methods, and equipment that you might use in planning a lesson.
All right, so do we just want to go around and say, like, at least who we are really quick for these two people who might not know all of us?
It's me.
My name's Rochelle.
This is Rochelle.
Wow.
That was quick.
Yeah.
Brief.
Wait, Rochelle, you've been with us for a while.
Yeah.
A while.
Wow, double wow. She's
Yeah,
very, very talkative
Rochelle is
tonight.
also a trainer. She's had a ton of experience, so she's a great person to have.
I have cool birds.
Yes, yes.
Right.
Tim?
I'm Tim. I was with the GET program at Jiminy Peak for 10 years. Then I left because of differences of opinion. I did go up to H Ranch for a season, and now that I have more free time in my life, I'm coming back, and I'm actually had always thought about joining Stride and getting out and doing some better, and I'm happy I'm here now.
Cool. Welcome to Sunday. We're Sunday people, so we'll feed you.
Thank you.
No problem.
I bake. I can't eat it, but I'll bake.
All right. Oh, that's right. We're gonna have to be careful to make sure we.
I can cheat a little.
All right. All right.
I'm dying today from it.
All right.
I'm Jeremy. I've been with Stride for a couple years now. One of the veterans in the program, as well as one of the newer instructors myself. Yeah, second year on the mountain. I'm loving it. Happy.
I'm Jake, second year at Stride, been snowboarding since I could probably walk, and interested to probably do a lot of cross training this year, so yeah.
I'm John. It's my first year with Stride. Friends with Jeremy got me into it. Excited to get going this year.
Cool.
I'm Chelsea. I was part of the Wounded Warrior Project program last spring, which made me want to come back and do it this winter, so I'm here doing that full time.
And
I'm Haley. This is my first time here, and I came with Jake.
all right.
Over there.
And the cameraman?
And the cameraman is my husband, William.
This is my 7th season with Stride. I'm not qualified at all, I guess. I started teaching skiing in 1970.
When you were 12.
No, I was 13. And I taught until 1977. Regular skiing, not adaptive.
Okay. And of course, Mary Ellen. Hi, Mary Ellen.
Everybody knows me.
All right. Okay. So first thing that I thought we would do is, just go through some of the disabilities that you, might come across in some files, just so that you have an awareness of the names that you're gonna see in a file, what kinds of, characteristics that someone with that disability might typically have, and we're gonna go through those, and then we're gonna talk about just in general, how to assess a student, and then equipment and training. Okay, so developmental disabilities, or DD, it's a really wide range. And basically, this is a disability that's really broad, it's general, it's early onset, it's kids who just aren't developing, the milestones aren't there when they're supposed to be, there's no specific chromosomal reason, and they are just developmentally delayed across the board, speech, motor, everything, balance, so you're gonna have somebody with decreased cognitive abilities, and it's basically going to technically be working with, say, a 12-year-old with a developmental disability might be functioning, say, around 4 or 5, but you still are working with a 13-year-old person. So you always have to remember, whoever walks through the door, you're working with a person first with a disability, okay? So even if they're functioning at 4 or 5, they're 13 or whatever age they are, it's a balance. You can't talk too much to them or at too high a level if they have a developmental disability, but you don't want to talk to them as if they're a 5-year-old. So you can decrease vocabulary without decreasing content, okay? So, for example, if I wanted Rochelle to put her feet on the floor and she had developmental disabilities, I might show her, feet down, and if she didn't do it, I might say, feet down, thank you. I didn't talk to her like she was a 5-year-old, but I helped her understand what I was thinking, okay? So, you're gonna see a lot of different kinds of characteristics with a developmentally delayed person. So you're going to need to assess them as they are walking through the door, and again, this is true of everybody that we work with. They walk through the door, you're gonna start assessing them as soon as you see them. How are they walking through the door? Are they helping? Do they have some of their equipment on? Are they getting a ton of support from their adults? Are they, looking to the adult that they're with all the time for interpretation? If they seem like they are wanting a lot of support, then you're probably gonna need to also give them a lot of support. If they're trying to do things on their own, that's a good sign that you're gonna be able to give them a little bit more time, with slower language. If you tend to be like me, and I tend to talk really fast all the time, and oh my gosh, and I'm so excited, oh my gosh, great to meet you. And we need to remember to slow down, give them time to process, give them time to think of answers, give them time to try to do as much as they can themselves. That's gonna make them successful, and that's gonna make them interested in trying to interact with you, and that's a good thing. Did everybody here, go ahead.
I was just gonna jump into, since we're talking about developmental and cognitive disabilities, kind of just a very easy way to separate the two is developmental arises either pre or during birth through age 18. So we're talking about a disability that impairs your cognitive functioning, your intellectual mental functioning, and that's when it arises, and then it can take all sorts of different forms. So it can happen in the womb, it can happen in the birthing process, it can happen, through an accident when, they're newly born, or it can arise up until the age of 18. Now, when we're talking about other types of cognitive disabilities affecting the brain, those would be after age 18. And so those would be adults, and a lot of times adults that have have had trauma to the brain or something like that, they're dealing with something a little different in that they might not have had this this impairment prior to adult onset, and so they might have the added element of learning to adapt to this disability and learning to adapt to ways that their brain is not functioning now, and thinking that, oh, it should function this way, how come it's not? And so there are added challenges when like a traumatic brain injury or something happens later on in life. But broadly, those would be kind of like the two categories that we're dealing with tonight, and
Yeah, acquired versus developmental.
exactly.
Great. Did everybody go to, except for you, you didn't,
Yeah.
the autism, you went to Jiminy Peak? Did you guys go to the autism? Okay. All right, autism is a huge component of the students that we're working with. And autism is like saying, oh, I'm gonna teach you about leaves on the trees. I mean, it's a way huger range than anybody with a developmental disability. And autism is an onset, it's early onset. It's where you cannot process any kind of incoming information in the correct way. There's almost always a language component where even people with, say, high functioning autism, they still have a language component where they might misinterpret what you're saying because they don't understand the vocabulary you're using, or they don't understand the vocabulary in the way you're using it. You're using multiple meaning words, or things like humor and sarcasm can really be troublesome for people with autism. So you have to remember, when you're working with people with autism, try not to be sarcastic. Try to be straightforward. If you want them, hello, welcome. If you want them to do something and understand something, use simple, direct terms. Don't say, what do you think about going to the top of the mountain? That they're just, most of the time, that's gonna be confusing to them. We are going to go to the top of the mountain. I will help you. We can do this. We will use our skis. So simple, direct, straightforward language. And again, lots of processing time. Most of the disabilities that we work with need processing time. Processing time is, I talk, you listen, your brain interprets what I'm saying the same way my brain does. That's the big thing. They may be taking in what I'm saying, but if they don't interpret the same way that I intend it to, there's a communication breakdown, and that's confusing. So, a lot of times these guys just process slowly. It takes their brains longer to figure out what it is you're saying and why you're saying it.
But, never mind. Keep going.
No?
Yep, yes, keep going.
Okay. So, autism, I don't want to spend a ton of time here because it's just too much to cover and cover everything else. So if at some point you want one of us to teach you more about autism, we'll certainly be happy to do that, okay? All right. So then, cerebral palsy, some people say cerebral palsy, it's the same thing. It's a disorder where your nervous system, everybody has a decent understanding of your nervous system? Yes? Okay. The sheathing around your nerves doesn't develop the right way. So, say a telephone wire. There's wires and there's the casing on the outside. The casing on the outside is disturbed so that some of the message leaks out and it may leak out high, it may leak out all over the place, it may leak too much here and not enough there. So the brain is telling the muscles to do something, but the message isn't getting there the right way. Oftentimes, you're going to see a person, some people, and again, it's a wide range, some people can walk with cerebral palsy, but they're going to be typically stiff gait, their joints won't work as well, their balance, because of their immobility and their firing of the nerves not being quite right, their balance is compromised. Sometimes with severe cerebral palsy, we have people in wheelchairs. Sometimes it's so severe they cannot speak. They use communication devices. I can quickly show you a couple of types of communication devices because some of our folks will come in with this stuff. And, okay, this is an iPad, but it's made into a communication device with an app called Proloq2Go. There's also a couple of other apps now. Words for Life is one, and Quick Talk is another. This is the one I just happen to have my school paid for it. They're kind of expensive, but not as expensive as some of the dedicated communication devices. Some kids will come in with dedicated devices, and then they're almost like little computers, but basically how these work is
I want go.
and then, you know, there's,
Describe. Shopping.
so then, that wasn't a good choice. Shopping, what did I do that for?
What was on your mind?
Yeah, right? Not usually that,
Sports. Skiing. I want go skiing.
okay? So it's basically replacing talking with a device that does it for them. Some kids have head pointers with lights attached to it, infrared lights that they can use. Some kids, this is called direct select. Some kids scan and hit a button. I don't think we've had anyone in a while that has anything but direct select. Some kids, we have a couple of kids that have similar applications on their phones, or they're just straight up typing with their phones. So not all people with cerebral palsy, even if they can't speak, have cognitive disabilities. And so you have to remember that when you're meeting somebody new with cerebral palsy, that you don't assume that they don't have the same cognitive level as their age, okay? Shoot high, and then if you find they're not understanding, step it down, talk to the families, read their files, all that stuff should be in their files. Sometimes the files come in shaky. Another type of communication system are pictures. These are PIC-SIMs. It's called a Picture Exchange Communication System, or PECS for short. And it's basically this idea, and some kids will use this at the mountain because parents don't want this to get lost, stolen, broken, wet, whatever. It's not as transportable as this. So some kids can come in with a ring like this, or a sheet that looks similar to that, and they'll just point to it. If that happens, then you become the voice. So you say what they're pointing to. And that way you both know that you have the same ideas from what they're pointing to. Okay? So say this was just paper, and they said, I want go ski, and you say it while they're pointing, and all of a sudden they're like, no. You know, that's not, oh, okay, well, let's try again. So it's their only way of making sure that what they're pointing to is getting interpreted the right way, okay? So, another form that some of our kids come in and their parents don't bring anything. Use yes, no questions. Yes, no. Do you wanna go skiing today? Yes, I do. No, I don't. Great, I do too. Do you think you're gonna be warm enough? I'm warm enough, I'm not warm enough. Okay, let's fix that, we can fix that. Let's get another coat on. Are you ready to get another coat on? Yes, I am. No, I'm not. Great, thank you. Okay? So you can just ask a series of yes and no questions. Most of these guys will be able to either do this, yes, no. A lot of them can have enough mobility to do that, or look at their eyes. A lot of them will use their eyes. So, yes, no, okay? So it just depends on the level of their ability and mobility to communicate, but they can. It just takes time. You have to be patient, and you have to be observant. People with cerebral palsy really have to be observant, and the more limited they are mobility-wise, the more observant you have to be. You really have to look for signs. And we do have several kids who are nonverbal, wheelchair-bound, very limited physically, but they love skiing, and they sit ski. They sit ski. And people like Rochelle, who are awesome at tethering and thumb tethering, sit skiing, take our kids out. They tend to be fragile people because they're very stiff. A lot of times, especially if they're wheelchair bound, they will have very tight muscles. So we have to keep them warm, and we have to keep them safe. Because if they get startled and all of a sudden a hand goes out and that hand touches the snow, that arm is gonna break. So we need to make sure they're safe. And again, the more mobile they are, the less fragile they are. It's that because they have better muscle control, because their joints work better. And that's true of a lot of our kids too. The more mobile they are, the less fragile they tend to be, okay?
And just going back to the communication, I think a good way to summarize it is when you're evaluating them, you wanna think about communication as being a two-way street, in that, how are they receiving what's being communicated to them? And then what is their ability to communicate outward? And those are two different things. And so she kind of described both, with a cognitive disability, you might have to change your communication methods if you're kind of speaking over their head. So you want to shoot high at first and then adjust depending on how they respond. But it could be that they understand you perfectly fine and they have a really high IQ. It's just what's in their brain that directs how they communicate, that's what's impaired, and so they have to go to other mechanisms. So those are just if you have like a little checklist in your evaluation or your assessment, you want to think about communication as a two-way street that way.
When you're riding on the lift, be careful what you say, because they'll go home and tell their parents.
Yes.
Without a doubt.
Yep, and that's happened before too. A good way to tell if a person has a good understanding is use humor. Because if they laugh at something silly or funny or stupid that you do, then you know that they're pretty cognitively aware. It's a really good way of kind of the barometer of intellectual levels. Humor. Yes, singing songs, and if
They'll
you
laugh
sing
at you.
badly, yeah, they'll laugh at you. Yep. Okay, any questions about cerebral palsy? Moving on, okay. Acquired brain injuries, okay, head injuries, TBIs, traumatic brain injury, okay? We do have pretty wide range of people with traumatic brain injuries. And I wrote myself a note here because this kind of tends to get forgotten sometimes, but severe seizure disorders can result in traumatic brain injuries, okay? So if a person is having a pretty severe level of consistent seizures every single time that person has a seizure, it causes brain damage. And it can change how they function from minute to minute, but also over time. So if you have somebody who comes in and they have a seizure while they're with us, the the lesson is over. Absolutely, no questions asked, even if it's a small one. The lesson is over because their brain has just been altered. Even if it's only for a short time, it can affect their motor coordination, their decision making, their ability to tell if they're hurt, they're cold, they're sick, and so done for today, not forever, but that is something that we always have to remember. With seizure, if with anybody with a seizure disorder, they have to wear a seizure strap, and I didn't see one, but once we get to the mountain, and is there one there?
Isn't it
Strap
within the
or
last
harness.
year or two? I thought if they had a.
No,
separate-
this is not a seizure harness. A
Oh,
seizure
yeah,
harness,
That's our tether association.
that's, yeah, the seizure harness is for the lift. If a person was to have a seizure on a lift, the first thing that typically happens to somebody with a seizure that's sitting there is they stiffen up, their bodies stiffen up, and then they're gonna slide off. Slippery pants, cold plastic seat, they're gonna slip off. So a seizure strap, it's similar to this, but
It's a
it
strap.
has a stretchy thing. Goes around their waist, and when they're sitting on the lift, it is hooked to the chair. So when they get on, you hook it on. Before you get off, you have to unhook it, okay? Okay, so,
Well, that would be a grand mal seizure. So there are also the petit mal seizures.
but anybody
Doesn't
with a
matter.
seizure disorder has to
Where's the
wear
strap?
one.
Right,
It's a mountain rule now.
Yeah.
But as far as being able to tell if a seizure is taking place, you wanna, not all seizures are gonna be the classic
True.
thrashing. And so you wanna be aware for blinking, for staring, for typically the eyes or unresponsiveness, things like that, and it can happen in like a flash.
Gestures too.
Yeah.
With Jake,
Hmm?
with another one of
Oh,
our
yeah.
vendors.
Mhm.
He,
Yep.
he'll have seizures, and we all know this, so it's not
Right.
undisclosed information. When he does, he'll sit there and he won't stiffen up, he won't thrash or anything. He'll stand there and the rocking back and forth, motor function gone, brain function just ceases, and there's a certain, basically the body is stuck with one motion that
One
sticks to
motion.
that, yeah.
Yep.
So that's another thing to look for. I had a student last year, it was a normal, never ever, just with Jimmy Pico there, I saw, similar to Jake, didn't know the person had seizures, and he was just,
Oh, yeah.
and I knew right then and there he was having a seizure.
Mhm.
No one even knew, like, what is he doing? Is he just like, is he upset, or is he having a seizure? So that's another thing I look for, a lot of people miss that, so.
And so you wanna stop the lesson, right there. And then, people are familiar with epilepsy, which is actually a developmental disorder. It occurs between 0 and 18, but then there are also the acquired seizure disorders, and so those can occur later on in life.
Okay, so other causes of traumatic brain injury, accidents, okay, car accident, motorcycle accident, falling out of a tree, anything. Any kind of accident where you hit your head and the brain is floating in water, or not water, but liquid, inside your skull. So when your skull hits something, your brain sloshes forward and then sloshes back. So you can have two spots that are damaged from some sort of accident. Some of our wounded warriors, it's from loud noises, the concussion of the mortars going off.
Roadside bombs, IEDs.
Yep, roadside bombs can cause traumatic brain injuries. And they're developing helmets now, they've been working on this for a while, but developing better helmets to protect the brain from those concussive forces. So air and sound can cause traumatic brain injury.
Having dinner right now here, I was teaching on my last deployment as well. We had the newer model helmets that had better cushioning, it had better protection when it came to the head, so when that percussion came up and that explosion came up, when it hit my truck or others, you see how much the difference from the first deployment to where it was just a big dome and there was nothing, it was a headband compared to now if when you hit, you're not really moving as much, your helmet isn't sloshing around,
Right.
you don't have to worry about the helmet flying off, it's like it cushions your head to the point where if you hit, you won't lose conscious as much, you'll remember what's gonna happen, you will have a traumatic brain injury, but they are becoming more and more effective.
Like a
It's-
football helmet now?
Yeah, it saved
Yeah.
my life many times, so.
You can also have acquired brain injury from brain tumors, from radiation, and from other types of diseases that affect the brain. Strokes, yep,
This is a big one.
Encephalitis.
encephalitis, yeah, so other sicknesses. So there's lots of causes. Some typical things that you might see from somebody with a traumatic brain injury is they get frustrated easily. They don't deal with their anger well. Not always, but can, okay? Poor coordination. They might have one side weaker than the other, depending on where in the brain it was damaged. So whatever area was damaged, that can have, it can impact a lot of different things going on. It can affect speech, it can affect their motor, it can affect their vision, it can affect their hearing. So there's lots of different things. So again, as soon as they walk in the door and you've read that in their file they have a traumatic brain injury, you're gonna have to find out more about it if there's not enough information in the file.
A big one too is impulse control and decision-making ability, because you can have someone that communicates fine, who's very, very smart, you know, and you know, they may have great skiing abilities even, and you're almost wondering, why am I with this person? You know, but impulse control on a set of skis or on a snowboard, flying down a mountain, like that can be very, very dangerous. And for someone who has an issue with impulse control, whether it's from TBI or like ADHD or something like that, just the risks, if you look at the statistics of those types of individuals, impulse control and the adrenaline rush and everything leads to very increased dangers, I guess, in lifestyle and fatalities and everything. So that might mean, as a teacher, an instructor, an assistant, whatever, that you have to take on more of the responsibilities about whether or not this is an appropriate decision that's happening.
They also tend to have memory issues. So if you have set up boundaries for them and you've made a plan and, hey, we're not gonna go on the Black Diamonds today because it's icy, and then all of a sudden they're going by Wild Turkey and they all of a sudden they're like, wait a second, whoa. So you have to keep reminding them. And again, you'll figure out and you'll know hopefully before you're going past Wild Turkey that they need to be reminded that, no, we're not going down there. Today's not a good day, and maybe not ever. It's why we all must wear helmets. We all will wear helmets while we're out teaching. We
But-
have to be good role models.
And you have to think too, especially for this group of persons, that for the average person, wearing a helmet protects your head. If someone already has a head injury,
Yes.
then this can be really, really bad. And we have several people in our programs where if, you know, I can think of one person in particular that has a head injury and does not have the ability to catch herself if she falls backwards. So if she falls backwards, boom, like her head smacks like directly, and she's like 5'10". So she just, you know, and she's required to go to the hospital every time she falls because of this head injury. But it happens all the time where she has an increased risk of having another head injury because of her current head injury. So we really have to watch out for those things.
Right. Questions, comments? Moving on.
Oh, I just want to say, this group of people though is like they're
Oh, yeah.
the most fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they require you to be on your toes. You have to be constantly alert. You can't lose like track of what's going on. You know, if you just kind of drift off in space by yourself, like at one point, like they can do something and you'll completely miss it. You know, if you misread them, you'll find out pretty quick. you know, but the sense of humor and, you know, and especially like if someone does have some kind of communication problem where they have a hard time communicating to you, when you figure out what's going on in their head, like it's kind of like a mystery or a puzzle sometimes, and it's like you want to dig deeper, you want to learn more, because it's like, who is this person that's kind of in there, you know? I think that it's one of the reasons why I've stayed with adaptive, is like, especially, you know, it's really fascinating, and it's a challenge, and it's fun. You don't really get bored when you
I don't get
work.
bored with any of these
Yeah.
guys, but yeah, they're fun.
Mhm.
Okay, moving on to learning disabilities. Every one of us has a particular learning style that they prefer. And some of the learning styles are visual learners. Somebody who likes to watch. I can watch Rochelle do something and then I can learn from that. That's a visual learner. An auditory learner is, I can sit in class and I can listen to the teacher drone on and on and on, and then I never have to see the stuff, and I got it. Those people are annoying, by the way. My son is really good at that. That is his strength, okay? And then a kinesthetic learner is somebody who learns by doing. Don't show me, don't talk about it, let's just go do it, okay? So there's different learning styles. Now, some of our kids have learning disabilities, which is a little bit different. When you see learning disability on their file, it's going to be something like they have trouble with spelling and reading and, you know, writing, language arts, okay? It's not going to hugely impact their skiing. However, they have a disability. They might also have a different learning style, so you're gonna have to work with them and make sure that your language and what you're saying to them is getting through the way you want it to, okay? Because sometimes they have processing issues as well. Sometimes their learning disability is in language processing, okay? So a learning disability can be, I don't learn just by listening, and so it's an auditory processing problem, okay? So sometimes it can be a particular subject, or sometimes it can be a style or an area of brain development. These are typically our easiest kids to teach, because a lot of the academic type of learning disabilities don't really impact their ability to learn how to ski. However, you do have to think about their learning styles. And does this person want me to describe every little thing that we're gonna do, or do they just wanna go out and try it? And I'm gonna have to show them, so you're gonna have to throw a lot of different little things at them, like, I'm gonna talk about it, I'm gonna show them, I'm gonna model it, I'm gonna do it, oh, let's do this together. Sometimes we actually put our hands on their bodies, put their bodies in the right alignment, their skis in the right position. Sometimes just getting their attention, look here, look there, reach here, not that hand, this hand, okay. So getting them to manipulate their bodies to show them the right body position for skiing.
So a lot of times, for some of these learning disabilities, just the format of our lessons addresses the disability. You know, so they might not work well in a large group of other kids, you know, where they're distracted or there's a lot of commotion or whatever, but just being in an adaptive lesson with one-on-one or two-on-one, where we have two instructors and one student, that just kind of makes the learning environment just what they need. And so that's why it works out where it's like, yes, they actually do need adaptive assistant or an adaptive lesson, but we don't really have to do much more with teaching methods or with equipment, because just the environment itself addresses their need. but also when it comes to their learning styles too, what Heather was describing of addressing, both visual learning and auditory learning, how we're explaining things, and also the kinesthetic, kind of getting their body into it. That would be considered a total approach method, where you're addressing all three different types of learning styles, and especially not just with the learning disabilities, but also other types of cognitive impairments. So if you're dealing with someone who has a very low IQ, for example, then what they're taking in from you, that is, they're impaired in that way. And so you might want to describe things, A, in different ways, and B, a couple of different times in different ways. And then after a couple of different tries, then they'll start to get it as you use different approaches. So that's one of the reasons why paying attention and assessing what might their learning style be, but also even if I've identified, oh, they really respond well to this, sometimes using a total approach method also is very, very effective.
One of the disabilities that isn't on here for some reason, I thought it was, is Down syndrome. So I just want to go over it really quick. Oh, is it? Okay. Kids with Down syndrome but this tendency isn't as prevalent as it used to be, but they tend to be a little bit overweight, but they're very flexible. They're often double jointed. They can get into positions that you think, oh my gosh, they're gonna dislocate a hip, tear a tendon, and they're good. But their muscles tend to be a little bit weaker. The tendency isn't as strong anymore because we as a society are better at being healthy and making sure our kids, no matter who they are getting proper nutrition and proper exercise. So it's not as prevalent that they're overweight and weak, but you can see it still. And they process really, really slowly. So,
Well, it depends.
Pretty often. Fairly often, people with Down syndrome, they process really slowly. One of the things that you do have to remember about many people with Down syndrome, they tend to be very stubborn. They want to do what they want to do. So it comes out as stubborn. But if you can just get them to communicate, well, tell me what you want to do. Let's work on this together, because often it isn't as much as stubborn as they don't really communicate well about what exactly they want to do, but if you can get them to talk about what they want, you can often get them out and get them going by having them say, oh, well, I want to go get a hot chocolate. Okay, well, you can have a hot chocolate, but first we have to go skiing. Okay, let's go skiing. Let's get out there and have fun. I'm sure you can earn a hot chocolate at the end of this, so.
If you haven't worked with a Down syndrome child, or adult, but they're some of my favorites. They've got an incredible sense of humor. They love playing tricks.
Yes.
And my favorite lesson, of all time, that I still hold close to my heart. I'm like, oh, I wish I could ski with him again. He was 6 years old, and the first hour of our lesson, he did not want to go with me. He only wanted to go with his uncle, and so we walked to the snow, we finally got to the slope, but he just did not want to do anything. So we spent an hour having a snowball fight.
Yep.
And after that, we totally bonded, and he learned how to ski so fast. It was really, really cool. And I'm sitting there, and the other instructors are passing by you, and the other, and they're watching you have a snowball fight for an hour. But that was what was required, and it worked, and it was a blast. And it kind of, as I said, it's another example of how adaptive skiing is really a whole lot of fun, and you just have to be comfortable with stepping outside of the box and just reading what's going on with your student and what might work.
Right, and that brings up a really good point. You have to develop rapport with these guys. You have to develop a little bit of trust, and sometimes it takes an hour. And we have a 2.5-hour lesson. A lot of our guys can't really ski for 2.5 hours anyway, especially if they're young. especially at the beginning of the season, because their muscles haven't, they might have been playing baseball or soccer or swimming, but it's still not the exact same muscles as skiing, so they need to build up to it, just like we do. So.
Or they might not have been doing
Or
anything.
maybe they haven't been doing anything at all. So one of the great ways to be able to assess how long they're going to be able to go out and ski is asking mom and dad, what other sports are they involved in? What other things do they normally do outside of skiing? If she says, oh, he really likes to sit on the couch mostly, you're not gonna get 2.5 hours in a lesson, especially at the beginning of the season. You might be able to work up to it if it's a kid who's gonna come every week or every other week. So sitting around having a snowball fight is really not that bad a thing, okay? They're outside, they're getting used to the snow, they're getting used to the clothing and the equipment, they're actually getting some exercise, they're watching people go ski, so they are getting stuff out of it.
And we have to remember always, safety first, then fun, and then learning. So when we get that rapport and we have fun, whatever way it is. So if you're not skiing, figure out other things that you can do that makes it fun, going through the little things in the toolbox. For kids with autism, a lot of times doing like the social stories beforehand, this is what we're going to do. Social stories are like little books kind of that describe, a sequence of events that they can expect that will happen throughout the lesson. Sometimes it's like discovery, what do we see on the mountain? Those can be fun little games that kind of set up rapport, or, little things with equipment, there are lots of ways to integrate fun, both skiing and not skiing, in between skiing.
Okay, so let's keep going. We really did talk about communication receptively, what they're understanding, expressively, how they're telling you what they want, okay? So keep that in mind. A lot of what we do is also in the realm of social skills. We want them to be able to build rapport with us. We want them to be able to be socially appropriate at the mountain and be engaged with us, with other people, standing in line, learning the etiquette of the mountain. We can't hit into people. If we're going faster than somebody else, it's our responsibility to keep both myself and the other person safe. So teaching all those things is really in the realm of social skills, but it's just as important, because we want our guys to build leisure time activities and enjoy themselves and be part of what everybody else is doing, what their families are doing. Most of our guys, their families ski, and the goal is teach them to ski so they can then go ski with their families. So we have to teach all that stuff.
And then just one other thing on the social side is that, and this kind of goes back to communication, but if they're at a cognitive level that's below what we consider their chronological age, so they're 15, but they have a cognitive level of like a 6-year-old or, or so, we want to talk to them as if they were of their chronological age. That's just kind of part of the social thing. We don't want to be using language necessarily. We wouldn't speak to them exactly the same way that we would a 5-year-old. It's just kind of, we adapt the language still though to their understanding, right?
Yeah, we kind of went over that before, but yeah, with the feet down thing, you're not gonna say to a 17, do you need to go potty? You're not gonna say that. Well, sorry. All right. Medications. I want to talk briefly about medications. In the file, after you see that they have a disability, what it is, whether their family ski with them or not, you get some background information. You want to look and see if they're on medications and what they are. Some medications make kids tired, and some medications make them have a particular diet. So you can't just be feeding them anything that they, want. So you do wanna take note of any medications that they're taking. There's no way for me to teach you all about medications, and there's no need to. They change all the time. You're gonna get that information from their parents, and they're gonna tell you, oh, he didn't sleep last night because I forgot his medication and we're staying at the mountain, and so,
Actually,
he's thrown.
They don't always tell you
They
that.
don't,
It's actually
they
a good
don't
thing
always.
to ask.
Yes,
Did you take your
ask.
medication today?
Yes.
Look in the file, read, if you can, ask another instructor that's had the student before. If you have a phone on you, a smartphone, and can look up a medication, that's always helpful as well. And then definitely ask, especially if they had it. Asking if they've eaten, if they've had enough to drink, if they slept the night before. I mean, sleeping is a huge thing, but the medication too, if they have ADHD and parent takes them off their medication that day because, they're not in school, well, you're in a lesson, but, guess what? It's gonna affect, how they act and what you're working with. But then, also some medications make them colder, make them bruise more easily, so if they have an accident on the hill, you wanna know that, you wanna be able to tell that to ski patrol. But definitely ask. Some parents just assume things or don't think to tell parents, or tell instructors things.
Yeah. A lot of medications that we're gonna see are for anxiety and behavioral control. And again, a lot of parents do tend to take their kids off of these kinds of medications as well. And they, parents call them drug holidays. Sometimes it can be actually downright dangerous, depending on the medication. So again, if you see medications listed, it is okay to ask them, did your child take their medication today? Okay? And then you wanna assess their physical condition. And that goes back to, did they have a cold? Did they look tired? Did they eat? Did they drink? Did they go to the bathroom? How do they communicate that they need to go to the bathroom? That's a big one. A lot of these guys can't really communicate all that well. That's a big one. You're gonna see a lot of negative behavior if a kid can't tell you, I'm cold, I'm tired, or I need to go to the bathroom. So those are the three that you wanna know. How does this person tell me if they need to do any of those three? Yeah, hot, but it's easier to tell if a kid's hot. Their face is red, they're pulling at their clothes. You can tell. It's easier to tell. It's not always, sometimes our kids I'm freezing. And I'm like, dude, I'm freezing. Are you cold? And they're like, no. But sometimes they don't know they're cold. And then all of a sudden they're acting out. And you yank off a mitten and you grab the hand and it's an ice cube. I'm like, oh, you're cold. Let's go in, let's go take a break.
That's that sensory problem.
Yeah, because they have sensory problems.
A lot of what she's getting at is, your goals as a teacher, you're going along in a lesson and you're just kind of assuming things and taking for granted that there's a learning environment that's established because you're in a lesson and you're talking and you're skiing down a hill. And then suddenly you get behavior problems. And it's like, why is this kid acting out? And you don't want to just assume, this kid, they're acting out, what a rotten kid. Or, man, this person's really frustrating me. Because you want to ask, what's the cause of this? Is it, an anxiety thing, or is it, a fear thing? A fear thing's big. Is it because they have to go to the bathroom and they can't express it? The attention when they're not paying attention to you and you're talking and you're like, that just went over their head. Well, sometimes you have to make sure that they are paying attention to you, to be attentive to their attention. And when it's not working, it shouldn't be, when the right things are set up in place for skiing to happen, skiing is naturally a fun thing. And so you can it's not always that hard to diagnose what's going wrong in a lesson. Because you want to make sure that they feel safe, that all of their basic needs are met,
Right.
And then introduce kind of the rapport, the trust, and then the fun, and things should work. And then if it's not working, then just stepping backwards. But starting basically with the basics with this population is drink.
Right. Yep.
Body.
Yep. So again, they walk in, you start assessing all of this stuff that we're talking about. One of the things that we haven't talked about yet, it really is lifestyle and what their interests are. It's really important to break into their worlds. Because we're gonna really bring them into our world, and our love is skiing. We want to build that into their world, but they might not be there yet. If you have newer, younger, haven't experienced this yet type of people, and we're gonna see them. We're gonna see the kids who've been with us for a long time, and yes, skiing is a part of their life and a part of their, oh my gosh, I can't wait for it to snow type of thing. But we're gonna get kids that this is not part of their life, so we have to break into their lives. So we need to find out what they are currently interested in. So, video games, TV shows, movies, books, games, whatever it is, use that to your advantage. I had a lesson where the kid just wanted to do straight run, wasn't listening, wasn't engaged, and I was having a really hard time. And finally I figured out they liked Sonic. And I was like, oh, there's rings over there, let's go get the rings. And I just happened to know the sound of Sonic grabbing rings, and I was ding, 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 anytime he made a turn, and all of a sudden, he's just turning all over the place, because I broke into his world, instead of trying to force him to break into my world, because he just wasn't interested. He wasn't interested in my world. And then you can use that kind of stuff to build rapport, to teach things, to get their attention, and to make it fun. So that's really big. Sometimes if they can't communicate that themselves, ask the parents. That's one of those, another thing that you can ask the parents, what is their current, and sometimes that's not gonna be in the folder, because they're just like any other kid. You know, what they liked 3 years ago when this file started is now different, because they're older and there's new stuff out there. So what's the kid currently interested in? You know, 5 years ago, everybody was Harry Potter, but that's not as popular anymore. You know, so you gotta figure out what it is. And if you think you're gonna have a kid over and over and over again, and you're not familiar with the new thing, say somebody really is into Ben 10, and you're like, what the heck is Ben 10? Take the time the next, right, it's a cartoon. Go take the time to spend 10 minutes and look it up, you know, during the week if you think you're gonna see that kid again. Figure out a couple of the characters. You don't have to go sit and watch 20 hours of Ben 10, but know a little bit about it so that you can start breaking into that world. Or if you have a break and you have a smartphone and you're taking a break and, oh, well, let's look I don't know anything about this, show me, you know, show me, let's check it out, and then bring that outside with you. You can adapt almost anything that they're interested in. Pokemon, you know, whatever, magic cards, whatever it is. So, lifestyle.
And so then the other thing that you want to talk, especially with the parents, with is behavior and learning styles. So when it comes to learning styles, you know, how does your child learn the best? You know, and they might be able to tell you, but might not think before you ask them. But if you ask them, they might be able to say, oh, if you show them things, that works really well. Or, oh, this, that, and they can give you, you know, they might be able to help you with, oh, they don't listen very well, you know, so instead, kind of whatever. The other thing is behavior, and so if they like a reward system, like there are some parents that, you know, always have Skittles on hand or something like that, and they're like, oh, rewards work really well for them, or just what good parameters or boundaries are good for them. Those are also things that if you learn it right at the beginning, it can make the whole lesson a lot easier, and it saves you the problem of learning through experience.
Yep. All right, we gotta move on to 7 o'clock. Page 2. Ding. Page. All right. You don't necessarily have what we're looking at, but
Can I say one thing?
yeah.
You keep saying, ask the parents. You're in a busy room,
Yeah.
lots of people.
I was just
You
gonna
got a
say
kid
that.
dressed to go outside, he's starting to sweat, and you're asking all these questions. It's
Yeah,
gotta
you
be
gotta
3,
be-
4 questions and you're out the door, or you're gonna lose the kid before you even get him outside.
Yep.
So it's important that you see them getting antsy or it's not, I mean, you stand too long, something's gonna go flying, a ski boot, a ski, whatever, so,
Or they're gonna start stripping.
yeah.
And
So, be on top of
for
it.
you that you might not know this, we always have two instructors. So one is focused on the kid, one is talking to the parents. You're never gonna go out by yourself.
Not this year.
Okay, yeah.
Not this year. Yeah, like
Torn
you might, I
loads.
might. I don't think we'd ever allow Jeremy to go out by himself.
I have.
Oh, you have?
Yes, and you got hurt the time you went out. by
That doesn't
yourself,
mean
you
they
hurt
allowed
yourself,
it.
so we had-
No, it
Yes, you
wasn't
did.
by myself. I was with a group and got cut off by a skier.
Oh, okay.
That's all he remembers, it's too hot.
Which is
I got
why
no
we
time
wanna
to sell my
read the
phone.
file before the kid and the family gets there. So that you have a jump start on what it is you wanna find out from the parents.
So that means you're there at 8:30, not 5 minutes to 9, so that you
Right.
are ready to go.
And if you wanna take a free run, you better get on the lift at first run, go take one run and come back in.
Everything about snowboarders.
Yes. Okay.
Those knuckle draggers,
Amen.
just don't run.
And we've really already talked about a lot of this stuff on the second page.
Ding, turn page.
Yeah, right. Okay, so we really were just talking about the beginning of the lesson suggestions. Be ready, avoid waiting, assess, we already talked about this. How are they coming in? Are they carrying their stuff? Are they dressed? Oh, this is one thing my husband is great at, and I always forget to do this. If they come in dressed, check them anyway. Boots on the right feet, buckles, socks, pants. Some parents will put, the sock is like this, there's pants with a zipper, and they're inside the boot. No, but they don't know. And they're just happy that boot is on the foot.
On the
And
right
so,
foot.
the right foot, and not always. So
You
if,
laugh, been on the mountain, my feet hurt really bad, and you look down, the boots are like,
You're
holy
right.
crap, I missed that.
Well, the big problem is the kid may not be communicative expressively, and then, they're not gonna tell you, but there's something wrong, the learning environment isn't working, and that something wrong is there's like a little snap on the end of their pants leg that's digging a hole into their ankle. They're
Right.
not telling you that, and they may not even know that. And
a lot
oddly,
of
the
times they
parents are
don't know
so
what's bothering them. It's just
Bad
something
at this game, I don't
Yeah.
know.
I mean, I've actually had a kid who was fairly communicative. She wears orthotics. The orthotics were in the wrong boots. And she was skiing horribly. I was like, oh my gosh, what is going on? This is a kid I ski with all the time. And finally she said, well, my feet hurt. All right, well, let's go in. And then she takes off a boot and looks and she's like, oh, my orthotics are in the wrong boots. Like as soon as she saw it, she knew and could tell me, I never checked, never thought to check, so check. And a lot of times they love skiing and they wanted to get ready themselves and they did it themselves and look, I got dressed myself, I'm like, great. Okay, can I just double check really quick? Okay.
Same with the boots, they'll be buckled, but they won't be buckled tight enough. You need to make sure, because the parents don't want them to hurt or whatever, you need to, because a lot of them are just too loose. And if you have a loose boot, you're not gonna have a good lesson.
Right.
We
So
won't do that this year, will we? The rental thing.
Rental thing, yeah. Yeah, and sometimes the rental shop may not get the size right. If the kid is really saying, my feet hurt, bring them back to the rental shop. Sometimes the bindings aren't right, it happens. Sometimes on busy days, I've had a kid come in with skis where the binding, one fits, one doesn't. Okay, we
Two different skis.
well, or they just, when they were clicking them in and tightening them down, and, just got in the wrong spot. Just go back, figure it out.
They're very.
Don't adjust the skis yourself.
Don't adjust the skis yourself. It's a huge liability issue.
But the guys in the rental shop are awesome.
Yeah,
And they see you
they
come
are.
in, they'll help you get through the line faster. Somebody cut through the back door to get helmets and stuff. They're
Yes.
very, very attentive to us.
Yes, this is important. If something is wrong with your kid's equipment and they've already been through the rental shop, go in the back door, say, hey, this isn't working, I need this fixed now. They're so good to us. They see the jackets, they see the kids. They will take you, you will not have to wait through the line again. Okay, a lot of times, even if they're standing, if you're standing in the line the first time,
They'll pull you out
they'll pull us out.
every time.
Yep, they're really, really good to us. And pleases and thank yous go a long way.
So now, when it comes to, so we've kind of gone over a lot of the basics. So what do we expect, basically? We're looking at the file, look at the medications, look at what the disability is, look at what other instructors say, you know, if you can, talk to the family, and get them out to the slope, and then we're dealing with a ski lesson. And so, when it comes to what your goals for the ski lesson are, you want to teach them how to ski, and even if they have a learning, well, not even so much a learning disability, but a cognitive impairment where, you know, they might have a very low intellectual level or IQ, that doesn't mean that they can't learn how to ski great, you know, and so our goal is to teach them how to ski, and then it's just a matter of what are the methods that we're going to use in order to teach them to ski. The two things that we really want to look at, in addition to using adaptive equipment, is we want to look at our communication. So what communication techniques can we use in teaching skiing, and then the other one's behavior management. So with communication, the most important thing, and this I think goes across even when we're not dealing with cognitively impaired, but speak simply. Don't talk too much, you know. A lot of times examples and demonstrations and having them mimic, you know, and one of the fun things is that if you're working well with this population is that they teach you pretty quickly to just shut up, you know, and to be very limited and very simple and just figure out what is the most basic thing that I really need to convey right now, you know, and if you need to take more than like one breath in the course of explaining something, you're probably talking too much. So and also keep in mind that, you know, for most people, they can only keep like 1, 2, maybe 3 ideas in the head at any given time, but just keep it to one. Just like, let's talk about one thing, and then let's try it out. So keep it very, very simple. And so then when, you know, we already talked about speaking to them according to their chronological age, and then where you vary it is your teaching approach, you know, and you know, you would teach more to their intellectual level while addressing to them and addressing them and speaking to them at their chronological age. So the kinesthetic, the visual, all of that all kind of comes into the communication. And then behavior management, that's where we talked about, you know, first figuring out what's going wrong. You know, if it's something very basic, or is it, you know, you actually have someone, you know, that has ADD, or, you know, who has some kind of impulse control problem, or who, you know, maybe just has a problem with discipline, you know, or structure or something like that. And so there are a couple of different behavior management techniques that you can use with students. If you're dealing with a situation that looks very dangerous, where they're being aggressive, or if they're very antisocial, you want to get a hold of that in a very like non-threatening way, but non-questioning way. And a quick way to do that is a timeout. So, you know, and the timeout, it can be an actual kind of like stop, or it can be a just, we're going to take a timeout by doing this right now. So you can't go back to that until the timeout's over. And
sometimes if we use the word, let's just take a break, we need to take a break and regroup. Let's try, we don't want to punish our guys because we want to make this fun, but sometimes what they're doing isn't safe. And so if we say things like, the rule of the mountain is, we need to be safe. You're having trouble being safe right now, so let's take a break. Then we can go back to being safe, and while we're being safe, then we're gonna be able to have fun.
But it's just kind of like nipping it in the bud. And then one good parameter with a strict timeout per se is You wanna keep it brief and structured, and an easy way to do that is give them a timeout that in length by minutes is according to their age. So if they're 7 years old, give them a 7-minute timeout.
If you have a kid that's escalating, you're gonna make it worse. You need to keep moving, get them redirected, like she said.
Well, as I
But
said,
if you say timeout, we're gonna stand there for 7 minutes?
well, as I said, a timeout is not necessarily, we're gonna sit here and have a timeout. It can be, we're gonna have a timeout by going and doing this
I think I'd be
instead.
careful with the word timeout, cause they're disciplined all the time, and this should not
These days, that
be-
has
It's a
you know, they
negative
know what that means, and
connotation.
that's punishment. You just
Adrian-
never
not
use
Adrian,
timeout.
Julian would have
Take a
just
break,
taken you out and.
Or, hey, let's try another approach, whatever wording you need to use, but
Yeah,
using
but
timeout is an
it's a
invitation to
negative
escalation. We just don't do it.
And they're structured, their whole week is like so, and they need to have time. Sometimes they just need to be free. If you're gonna stand there and they wanna be spastic, we'll move out of the way and let them be spastic, but they're not hurting anybody. Let them be goofy, let
The
them
key
be.
is, if they're not endangering
Yeah,
the
anybody else or themselves.
the other skiers, and potentially themselves, although, you know, if they're biting themselves, you never intervene and stop that. You just don't. They know when to stop if they're biting too hard.
Right, so there are appropriate times to use a timeout and to not use a timeout. A timeout can be effective. I've personally used a timeout quite effectively. So don't discount a timeout, especially if you do have a situation that you really do need to nip in the bud. You know, as they've said, that there are times when it doesn't work out, and so an easy way, if a timeout, if that word does trigger an alarm, an easy way is to turn it into a redirect, you know, or to just turn the attention away and be like, okay, well, if not a timeout, then we'll call it something else, but it's basically it has the same effect on, you know, just changing the behavior, getting the focus off of whatever was triggering them in the first place, and getting it onto something else.
Yeah, we can change environment, we can change teaching approaches, we can change instructor. If we have 2 instructors, usually you'll have a lead instructor who's doing a lot of the talking, and then a follow instructor or support instructor managing equipment or making sure other skiers are staying away or doing some body positioning. Sometimes just the redirect is switching the role of the instructors, and that can be really effective.
And then another, I mean, depending on how they're acting out, sometimes, you know, a lot of kids will act out just to get your attention. If you don't give them that attention, or if you don't give them the response that they're looking for, they'll stop it just on their own. So just ignoring, that can also be, you know, a technique depending on what's going on. And again, you know, it depends on the child, and, you know, it depends on the circumstance. Another good thing, a behavior management technique, is just modeling, and that should really be happening all throughout the lesson, so keeping it very positive. That in and of itself, if you bring positivity to the lesson, then that models for them what's going to happen in the lesson. If you're excited and you're having fun, then they're gonna think, oh, skiing is a fun thing to do, and this is a fun place to be, and I wanna do this. And then you also have to be careful throughout the lesson that everything that you do, that they're watching, and especially if they have a communication issue or problem where they're not communicating well. I think, as was said at the very beginning of this clinic, you know, then you're still modeling for them, and so be aware that they're still observing you, and don't let your guard down just because they're not talking a whole lot. So, you know, especially when it comes to safety and everything else like that, don't just relax because there's not a lot of two-way communication that you're used to.
Right, and don't go skiing out of bounds, don't go jumping things that wouldn't be safe for that student to do, because everything that we do is modeling.
Don't we typically also stay out of the spring park too?
Yes. Yes, we're supposed to stay out of the train.
Be careful too, a lot of times with 2 instructors, one will go backwards, just ski backwards, just show them, you know, to follow them and stuff. If you do that, sometimes they swing right around and try to go backwards too, just because they're watching you. So you have to think, you know, tell them, I'm gonna do this, but you're gonna continue going forward or something. Because I've had kids just swing around to go backwards and you turn around and they're coming at you backwards, because they're following you.
exactly your behavior?
I think Down syndromes, they have a lot of, like a mirroring type thing, where they have a hard time if you say put your skis in a pizza, they'll give you that, you know? So, you know, a lot of it just is in how their brain functions too. So another good behavior management tool, you know, from the parents, they'll figure, you know, they can pass this on sometimes, is the motivators, what motivates them, you know, the reward system.
What they're allowed to have afterward. Don't feed our kids anything that their parents didn't okay first.
But we do have like a little reward box.
Yes.
The rewards a lot of times can just be, you know, you really like that trail, we can go down that trail after you show me 3 nice turns, you know, or something like that. There are also behavior contracts, which kind of works like the motivators.
Yep. We're gonna do 7 runs here, and if their motivation is to find out what they want. I wanna get to the top, okay, well, we're gonna do 7 good runs here, where you're completely in control, you can turn to a stop, and then we'll go up top. If their motivation is to get inside, we're gonna do 12 runs. At the end of 12 runs, and you have to think ahead. Are they gonna do 12 runs in 15 minutes? Then 12 runs isn't a good number. You know, you have to kind of gauge how long you want them to stay out, what you think they're capable of, what's realistic. Because if you get to 12 runs and there's an hour and a half left and they're capable of more, but you said 12 runs, that's what I'm motivated by. I did my 12 runs, I'm out of here. So you have to be wise with that. Find out what they want and why they want it, if you can. And a lot of times you can. They'll be able to tell you that usually. So, and use that wisely. Make a verbal contract. Oh, you know, Dad said you can have hot chocolate when we're done. We're gonna ski until 1:15, and then we're gonna go in. So you can use time. Doesn't have to be a number, it can be a time. Dad said, here's the money, you have to stay out until 1:15. That doesn't mean you can't go in for a quick break if they're cold or they have to go to the bathroom or get a drink or whatever. But we're gonna ski until 1:15.
And so another one that you might not think of that often, you can actually use deep breathing techniques as a behavior management tool. There are a variety of contexts to use that in, although I think they're probably a little bit more specific. It's something to kind of keep in your own toolbox, depending on the behavior. I might think of, you know, if someone's got a lot of fear going, or if they're
Having trouble
overly-
waiting in line.
Mhm.
The lines, the chairlift. That's where we see a lot of their anxiety pop up. So that's where you might want to use some of these techniques.
Or even at the top of a hill that they haven't done before. So that's a good one. It helps to focus them, you know, and kind of block out a lot of the external stuff. And also kind of calms them and gets through certain emotions that might be flooding them at the moment. And that, it kind of goes right into overstimulation, which is a huge problem with a lot of our athletes. So another tool for overstimulation is just changing the environment. So that can be terrain, it can be moving from a really noisy place to a quieter place or a less crowded place. And that in and of itself, you can notice a behavior. You know, again, the behavior can take a variety of forms, but basically it's what's not working for you in the learning environment, and then using any of these different techniques to kind of recalibrate things. All right,
All right, what's next?
I think
We have about half an hour left.
I was
So do
thinking-
you want to show some equipment,
yeah.
talk about some equipment real quick?
Yeah, so the most important thing, and Heather and I are probably both teaching this class because we both really like working with this population, these athletes. You know, I say all the time that I'd rather have a behavior management issue than someone who needs a whole lot of equipment, you know, and doesn't have behavior problems, because, you know, I think it's kind of fun, you know, I like the challenge, and everything. And yet, we have a lot of students that have a variety of issues going on, and so they might need some equipment assistance, as well. And so the most important thing is, if you don't need equipment, don't use it. And if you introduce a piece of equipment, always have a plan for how and when you can take it away. Because the goal is to get them to ski independently.
One of the first and foremost reasons to use equipment is because we can't keep them safe ourselves, or they can't keep themselves safe. So if you go out and you're skiing with somebody, this happened to me where I had a teenager who was on cricket and then 180, no, actually just on cricket, and was skiing beautifully. Turned to a stop, everything was great. We took her to 180, and she couldn't transfer that skill to the steeper slope. And the difference between cricket and 180 is it's a big jump. And so I'm like, I had to go and take her down because she was, yeah,
We took her out.
it wasn't pretty. I mean, she really could have gotten hurt. And I could have gotten hurt because by the time I realized she wasn't safe, she was going really fast. So I had to go get her, and I was going really fast, and I had to take her down, which meant I was going down too. So then I'm like, okay, she learned what she needed to learn on the cricket, and she's a teenager, she can't stay there forever. I didn't need any equipment on the cricket, but she couldn't get it. I had to keep her safe. So I said, now I need a piece of equipment. So I went and got this. It's a climbing harness, and you wear it. You know, you step into it, you know, you have it on. Then you can, once they're wearing this, there's a lot of ways to keep a kid safe once they're wearing this. You can attach tethers, long straps, so that you can be, you know, if you were tethering me, you could be way back there, I can be here. The other instructor is teaching the turns while she is doing speed control, okay? Keeping her safe, letting her use the skills that she learned on cricket. So then it becomes easier and easier to take this away. You can go from 2 tethers where I'm actually teaching you how to turn to 1 tether, speed control only, to the tethers are slack, I'm just there in case, to no tethers, but you still have handles. Now I can ski next to you, and if you start going too fast, I can just hook a thumb around you. Oh, remember we're turning. Oh, remember what happens when you go too fast. To she's just skiing with this on, to wow, you just did 5 runs, I didn't touch you. I think tomorrow or the next time, I'll just keep this in my pocket in case you need it.
The nice thing about that,
Jackets have good pockets.
we were just chatting on the phone the other night, and Heather was saying that she really likes using this with children with autism.
Yes.
And the reason why
Is because they really just see it as more clothing. They're already wearing a whole bunch of clothes that are possibly uncomfortable, and then this is just another piece of clothing. It's,
and they don't see it
they
in
don't
front of them.
see it, it's not big, it's easy to put on, it's really easy. This is almost the same thing, okay? This is horse and buggy. This is so cumbersome. This is every single time you get off of the lift, I have to loop this around you and make sure that this strap is around your waist, and it's really cumbersome. They don't like standing there. This is in their face, they can see it, it's sliding down, it's up here, they're trying to wiggle away, their skis are sliding, and instead, if these carabiners can just Okay, we're ready. We just went from a whole bunch of interaction that's not necessarily all that positive to, they already had it on, they've had it on the whole lesson, they've had it on before, they're used to it, it's fast, and then we're gone.
Alright, so let's take this scenario where you.
This?
No.
Oh, okay.
We don't have any equipment, so we just went up from cricket to 180, and Heather's there, and the kid starts flying away, and she takes him out. That's, yeah, what you have to be prepared to do as an instructor is, usually it happens where you block the kid, you take the hit for them. That's the number one job, but sometimes you have to learn how to do a controlled takedown to stop them.
Right.
But one of the easiest ways to do an thank you, you read my mind. So one of the easiest ways to suddenly introduce adaptive equipment when you're on the slope and you didn't realize that you needed equipment. And typically, especially at the 180 level, you don't need poles. So you don't have any poles on you, right? You're not expecting this. Boom, your body, through a 2-point hold, becomes the adaptive assisted equipment.
Right.
So what you would do was you would come behind them, you would put
So
your.
we're moving.
Yep.
And all of a sudden she comes behind me, and now she's got a ski between my ski, or my husband likes to have skis next to her on the outside of, whatever you're comfortable with. You will learn how to ski close, okay? And now she has my leg and my hip. I'm going straight down. Now what can she do with me? Turn. Turn to a stop. We need to teach our kids to be safe, so turn to a stop.
Yep.
So pretty much all of this equipment does that. How are you gonna teach the kid to turn to a stop? How are you gonna speed control?
Right.
Speed control is #1 name of the game. So this is,
Yeah, so when, just going back to the ATS, the American Teaching System Basics, the first, staying in control is like the safety rule #1, and you always want to teach them how to stop first and everything, because when they're not in control, you have a dangerous situation. So then, you were gonna show that, but I was just gonna go back to this.
okay,
So with the harness, we have a couple of different harnesses. This is, I think we have only one of these.
They must all
No.
wear the legs now, you cannot use a harness without the legs attached to them.
We have a bunch of those.
yeah, we have a
Yeah,
bunch
We have
now.
like 6.
We have blue ones, gray ones,
Well, no,
black
we have a
ones.
bunch of harnesses, but this is the easy one where you just pull it through your legs.
You
So
have
you
to-
attach,
yeah, you have to
Yeah.
step
and
through
then
it,
you
yeah.
pull it
Yeah,
through,
you pull
and
it
then
up,
you
yeah.
clip up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then I thought the other ones were
The
all
other
the
ones
ones where you
just
had to
step
step
through.
through. So this one, is a whole lot easier than the other ones where you have to step through. And you have to
Different
keep in
model,
mind that depending on the student, and especially their level of frustration and everything else, stepping through and all of that might be a lot for them. So it might, depending on the student, it might or might not be appropriate or easy to introduce. This one is relatively easy. When you're using it, we'll just put it around.
Actually, no, I think that is a one. Just look, it is a step through. Because if you twist it, if you take it, twist it.
That's
So
not a-
straps here.
No, it's not a step through.
No, it
You
isn't.
put it-
Okay.
No, she's right.
Oh, that's right, that's when it
Yep,
clips,
and then
okay.
it goes,
Okay.
yeah.
It clips around the back.
So, you like to clip it, but I just wanted to show them too how to strap it. What do we do with the strap?
They're hooked on the end of the,
With these, you wanna remember to get them over the hips. And we have a bunch of different sizes, so you wanna make sure that the one that you get is gonna fit your kid. We have light, well, they're blue,
We have,
they're for little kids.
we have the extra small, they're blue,
Yeah.
and then the rest are black, they're small, medium, and large.
So you would wanna hook the carabiner to the inside one here, and then you want to cross it over. So that way, you're actually controlling this hip with this arm. And then with this carabiner, you wanna do the exact opposite. So that's the way you're controlling the hip.
Yep,
So-
so if she pulls this one,
Mhm.
it's gonna help me pull here. And once my hips turn, I'm still facing downhill, it helps my skis get on edge. And then it's gonna help me pull and turn that way.
And so the goal is, you know, in the beginning, you're gonna manipulate a lot, or depending, sometimes they're uneven, you know, so the right leg is really strong and the left leg is really weak, and so you might have to do a lot of manipulation, you know, with one arm and not a whole lot with the other. But the goal is to get to the point where they're fully, where you're not doing very much at all, and eventually you can just kind of take the tethers away, or the harness, or, you know, a convenient trick if you've worked with them more than once, you know, and they're ready to move on, is be like, whoops, I forgot the harness today, let's see if you can go without it. So that's that. The horse and buggy, you know, sometimes all the harnesses are being used, or, you know, the nice easy one is being used and you don't want to deal with the whole, you know, step through thing. So just to show them how to use this, you would want to, yep, and then you want to, right? So we want to do a full
Yes.
loop like that.
Yes.
But then after that, and you want to put it around the waist. Heather.
This is what they do.
Right. And okay now, Heather.
Right. So you actually have to get some distance, otherwise they fall down.
Right. Now,
You
actually,
don't want them too high, you don't want them too low.
who
Really.
hasn't had a horse and buggy around their waist? Yeah? All right, because you should all get a sense of these. You want to try?
Sure.
All right.
Why don't you guys go over there? 'Cause then you
Over
can
there?
get distance. 'Cause
It's
you-
going outside camera view, but
That's
I
okay.
think it's
Cameraman.
okay.
Cameraman is
Cameraman can
capable of
follow.
attending to
Would I ever
this.
have a scenario where I would have to put this on me?
Where you would have
To
to?
have this on me? Or am I just seeing this for like the perspective?
Just
Yeah,
for
you
the
always,
purposes.
person that
yeah,
would have it?
because when you feel what control is around you,
You can wear it
then
all
you
the
can get a
time.
better
Okay.
idea of like, oh my gosh, it's so effective. This is why I want to do this.
I want the right one.
So, alright, so we want it right around the hips, right there. Alright,
And I'm
well, just stand still.
okay.
Okay.
Actually, it's pretty good.
Yeah, do you feel
Yeah.
it?
I do.
So yeah, and, I mean, ideally, like,
Yeah.
what?
Really good.
It does work really well, yeah, I know, don't we all wish that we were taught how to ski with these things instead of having to learn the hard way?
With a leash on me. Not this, but.
Alright, who else wants to try? Tim, have you had one of these yet? Yeah, you have?
I've,
Chelsea?
Jake wants to do it.
Oh, sorry, I have to resist.
Alright,
I'm eating for two.
You can have mine.
Okay.
there you go.
Someday I will just.
Beautiful. Okay, so just above the hip bone, kind of, or maybe just at the hip bone,
My
maybe.
days are nice.
Yeah, around the widest part of the hip. Good.
I think
Up,
I had two,
nope,
but I
we
accepted.
got it. We need
You gotta,
some more.
the cross has gotta go in front of you. There
We
you
tried,
go.
okay, alright.
Separate gumby.
Okay.
Very suggestive.
Very suggestive.
Giddy up.
Alright, so you're going in one direction and suddenly I want you to go in a different direction.
I'm definitely going there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Alright, there you go.
It does work.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well,
It's
and then
the
the same
starting
thing is
and
happening.
stopping that becomes a little bit cumbersome.
And, I mean, the same thing, you get the same feel with the harness
Yeah.
as well. So that's, John?
Giddy up.
I suppose so. How's this thing going now?
Alright, we'll put this over your head
Yeah, but that sounded
and then
actually
we'll
really
do
good. Clip
a
flop.
second loop. Stand right there. Okay, so we want
Set
that
the sonic
right
ones.
there at the hip.
Sound effects and I put it in.
So the real deal is you cross your arms with the poles, you ski into the person from the front, and you loop your one arm around it, and you back off behind them, and it goes on
All right, good.
instantly.
And
The
I
trick
didn't
is
even
not to
need
hit them
that
with a
there.
post.
Chelsea.
Chelsea, another Chelsea.
Two for B.
That means I'm gonna get two meetings right
The other
for
one
one.
is
Oh, yeah.
V.
There you go.
Yeah, yeah, they know
And
it's,
I'm gonna put this over your careful too, because when you have this, if you do a sudden yank, like that kid's gonna go flying. So there's a little bit of skill to it and maneuverability and kind of grace. So-
And once the mountain opens and we have our courses on snow, we'll have all this equipment out and then you can try it. Right, we're running out of time. We are finishing at 8 o'clock.
We are finishing at 8 o'clock. So this right here is a tip connector. So if their skis are really flying apart, you can kind of hold them in place by this, and
Is that the edgy wedgy?
it's very, it
Stiff
does
edgy
the
wedgy.
same
Okay,
thing.
yeah,
Yep.
that was a bungee, right?
Yeah, the bungees are not.
This
not so
does
effective.
pretty much the same thing, only it's more flexible.
So if you have a kid with poor muscle control or one leg wanders and they're crossing their skis a lot or their skis are coming out wide, that's when you would use that. And basically, all of this stuff is teaching muscle memory of correct positioning. Or it's my car, because my car alarm does that now.
Not mine, I don't have a alarm, I'm all good.
Or probably mine.
Oh, it might be clear. No, it's Crosway. It looks like a silver car?
Yeah,
The license plate.
unlock, hit the unlock button.
I don't have a car alarm.
There you go.
Thank you.
It was.
No, it does that now. It's like,
I'm ready
pay
to go home.
attention to me,
Yeah.
buddy.
She set the alarm on her car, nice.
Is it 8 o'clock yet?
6, almost 8.
The car must be,
15 till, 15
Yeah.
till.
car wants to go home.
Time to go home.
All right, so we also have these. This is for canting inside the ski boot. So
I thought that was food.
so we actually have these.
Bologna, yeah.
No, you can put this in the ski boot. Not a lot of ski instructors use these, but that doesn't mean that they shouldn't, because you know, if the leg's like really collapsing inward or something like that, just kind of getting the foot, and a lot of times their leg may have developed in kind of like an unnatural way, where this is really what they need. And instead of, you know, being like, okay, come back next week and go, you know, and pray that the parents take them to, you know, someplace that are, you know, goes to the rental shop, and the rental shop can fix it, like we can fix it ourselves. So might involve taking a break and coming inside and seeing if you can play with it, but it can be very effective. All right. Now, for a new student, and especially if they don't have good physical boundaries, they're out there, they're sliding on these flat boards downhill and don't know how to stop. They're freaking out, and they're going, and they don't want to learn how to ski independently because they're scared. So Heather.
Yeah.
How do we deal with that? We push them away. Literally.
No, I mean, but sometimes they will clutch at you, and what you did the first time is then directing them, holding them properly, and then directing them to a stop and showing them that you can keep them safe is really,
Right.
it's
So
really
if we
important.
had a ski pole, or there's a bamboo pole too, and there's like guiding like that from the side.
But you want them to hold here.
All the way
The
around.
balls go on the other end.
Well,
You the
if we're just
instructor or
using-
she the
no,
instructor?
As a pole. This is
Yeah, I'm
just a
pretending
bamboo pole.
a bamboo pole or
Or
a ski
your
pole or-
ski pole.
Right.
You want them to hold it this way and not this way, because this way, then they're doing this, and then they're doing this, and this way, if you have them hold this way, they can't do any of that. It's so silly that this becomes a whole bunch of bad habits, and this, and have them tell them, you're holding this up. You have to hold this up. I will hold it in, but you're gonna hold it up.
But now look at what happens. Again, a lot of it is handling the students' emotions and what's going on with them. Now, instead of being next to their side and trying to manipulate their body or whatever from the side, if you're suddenly in front of them on like the cricket, presumably, and you're going backwards and you say, hold that, nope, from under, just like this,
Cause
Very
they'll
good.
always, anytime you put something in front of the kids will hold it this way.
Go
So you
like
have to
that,
correct them.
And all of a sudden, look, there's distance between you. They can't cling to you. You still have control over them. You're backwards, you're right in front of them. You can maintain eye contact. You can keep their gaze up because a lot of times their learning is automatically inhibited because they're looking down. If you're in front of them and requiring them to, hey, look, we're having fun, da da da, distracting them.
Singing,
This is really
whatever,
effective.
breaking into whatever it is they like, dinosaurs, again, whatever it is they like, and you're gonna talk to them. If they're scared and they've been clutching you,
Now you can also.
this is a redirect.
Right, and you can also ask them to put their hands out a little bit farther if you want, just because that can help.
Because it also helps them to get in the front seat instead of in the back seat.
Right,
We want them in the front seat.
right.
So make sure that they don't, put too much weight here.
So that's what this does.
Do you wanna build a snowman?
Yeah, learn the songs of Frozen. All your homework is to learn the songs of Frozen.
Just, I was also
Oh,
saying,
please, no.
If you're out on the hill and all of a sudden a situation comes up, you don't have control, you need equipment and you don't have it, you can do the 2-point hold. You can take, if you have, and that would be it, especially if you don't have ski poles, but if you do have your own ski poles with you, you can either turn them and do a side thing, or you can also hook the straps together, and suddenly your straps can kind of become like a harness or a horse and buggy type
Oh, then
thing.
you're doing the pulley thing.
And we're doing the pulley thing, yes.
Oh,
You don't have the pulley?
only if you rivet the handles on first. I've had kids go pop off the end.
But there's also bamboo poles all over the hill. Just take one. If you're desperate, hopefully you won't be in that position because you haven't taken them up too high for their ability level and your teaching ability. But occasionally something crazy happens and they were skiing fine and all of a sudden their medication wore off and they got a huge anxiety attack and now they've forgotten how to ski. And that has actually happened to me before, where a kid was just like, was going along fine, fell, got a face full of snow, and all of a sudden she couldn't ski anymore. And we're in the middle of Grand Slam, and I have to get her down. I just grabbed a pole. They're all over the place. Just take one, and then put it back when you're done.
So then, the ski pal right over there,
Oh yeah.
same concept.
Yep. You can have the kid inside of it, and again, you want them to have them hold here, and then you would hold at the back, okay, here, you want, a lot of times with this, they will go here, but as long as their arms are out front, that's fine, that works.
I mean, when you have it too, your goal is to progress. So if suddenly you're in the middle of the mountain or even in the middle of the cricket, and you have this and suddenly like you want to take it away, you can still kind of use it like this, from the side, you can use it from the front, you can, use it like
Yes,
this.
they even use this snowboarding too.
That way.
The
Snow.
Nope, the other way. You're gonna
Why?
be on this way.
Yeah.
So you're gonna be snowboarding, she's snowboarding, I'm snowboarding, and we're all going that way.
Yep.
Because the other way is too short, you can't get me. The other thing that's cool is that you get to the flats, I'll go for a second, you hang on. You get to the flats, you're snowboarding, you flip it over like this, and then you just tow them along. You use them as a tow. So you can get them through the flats and stuff like that, cause on the top, sometimes it's dead flat, and you just tow along, and then once you get moving, you just slide behind them and flip it, and off you go. You don't have to stop to do like the horse and buggy or all that, you just flip, and the kids think it's hysterical when you're flipping it over their heads.
Yep, speed control.
You call it your
You
mat.
have less ability to help them turn with this. So it's actually kind of a step down. This is a person who's turning, but likes to go too fast, doesn't have a good ability to turn to a stop.
Or makes the one turn.
Yeah. One turn.
And then the hula hoop is pretty much
Pretty much the same thing.
only that one you can more easily like go on your arm or whatever when you're done with it. play games with.
Or just ski the whole way through.
Yeah, so those are like the basic pieces of equipment that we at least have in the office here. Any questions? Anything seem overwhelming or, oh my gosh, I don't know.
Really? We didn't scare you, Haley? Wow.
She said,
No, it's alright. Yeah, I think I'll be okay. I got questions on you guys when we start up on the mountain.
Cool.
Yeah.
Keep in mind, your first year also, you're not really gonna be like completely
Yeah,
hands-on, you'll
exactly.
be shadowing everything, so.
Mhm.
Every now and then we'll put you in the hot spot, but it's to learn.
We are a little short-handed this year, though.
Yeah, I
So we
feel
expect you
the
to
when I
be
do it,
quick on your
actually.
feet.
Do you
Yeah.
really?
A couple, like a few other people, yeah. If they're gonna pull through.
Yeah.
What's the problem? It's a big
Yeah,
commitment.
it is.
You're expected to be there every weekend.
For as long as the mountain's open.
Yeah.
And it starts Saturday,
I know.
Is that this Saturday or?
this Saturday.
Okay.
Are they gonna be open?
4 years ago, it was 22
They were open
weekends.
last weekend, yeah.
It
Were
opens
they open
training,
last
yeah.
weekend?
It was brutal.
There's a white ribbon down
About
there.
6
I mean, lessons,
I know.
lessons will
Yeah,
start
my
for a
family
few
kept
weeks
saying
after
it was
the
feeling like
first
what,
it starts.
Yeah.
Well, we went a year ago and it was
Yeah.
November 11th was best snow that we've had. Like 1 inch, it was top to bottom. The foxes were open. I mean, it was.
Unbelievable.
I know, but it's kind of fun. You pile it up.
Wrap it up?
All right, so, if you guys don't mind, there are teacher evaluations again. This is Heather and I'm